Hey everybody, welcome to the Global Health Impact Network Education Series. Now, our goal with these series is to take you on a journey to understand the topics we discuss in more depth. Today is our third episode on an amazing topic, I believe, which is IP, intellectual property. We hope you are learning a lot on this great journey in understanding IP. Now, in today's episode, we will cover where are you protected? Is IP territorial? So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you back to our expert, Mr. Joshua Goldberg, managing partner of Nath Goldberg and Meyer. Joshua, it's a real honor to have you back here and doing this for us.
It's great to be with you again, Martin.
Perfect. If you're okay, man, let's just jump into today's episode
Perfect.
again, which is where you protected. So let me ask you, Joshua, does getting a US patent protect my activities outside the country?
In general, it really doesn't, Martin. So, like most things, patents are territorial, right? If you think about if you own a house, again, we've talked about this before, you have a definite deed to property that says these are the boundaries. It's a piece of real estate, it's clear where it is. Patents are very little different. You have a clear definition of what you own, but because it's the US Patent Office that gave you that definition, that gave you that property, that's all you have. US property to enforce or to stop others to use how you will. If you're interested in protection in other countries, you then have to go take that protection and extend it into those other countries or other regions around the world.
Okay. But is there such a thing as a world patent?
Well, there is and there isn't. It's a very common misconception. So there's something called the World Intellectual Property Organization. And as an organization, they've created something called the Patent Cooperation Treaty, or PCT. What that is, it's a way to file a patent application, what's called a world patent application, to make a reservation if you want to possibly obtain protection around the world. And I do think of it like a reservation system because that PCT application does not ever actually result in a patent itself. It's a system, it's a way, it's a method or a product you can use where if you're potentially interested in, say, filing your patent application in 10 countries, but you don't want to pay for it right now, you can now delay filing in those 10 countries by up to 30 months. So if I filed my PCT application today, I'm now making my reservation. I want to file in all of these potential countries later, potentially 30 months from now. So today's June 1st, 2021. That means by December 1st, 2022, I will actually have to decide. Wait, December 1st, 2023. I got the math wrong. Sorry. um, I'll have to decide which of those countries do I truly want to book and pay for to secure that reservation I made today.
Okay, so what are the timelines involved with international filings?
Sure. So there are a few different ways of doing it, or a couple, I should say. So let's say I'll start off with the more traditional. I file my US patent application today, June 1st, 2021. That sets my 1 year clock by which I have to file internationally and get the benefit of today's filing date. So if I file in Europe, in Germany, in Japan, in China by June 1st, 2022, I'm good. Okay. That means I get the benefit of my 2021 filing date, but I don't actually have to file in all of those places until June 1st, 2022. The other thing is PCT application, which I just talked about briefly. That's going to operate similarly. So again, if I file my US patent application today, I still have that same 1 year to file my PCT application. So by June 1st, 2022. And that's still that same reservation system I was talking about. The biggest difference is my first 12 months I spent from June 1st, 2021 to June 1st, 2022 is going to eat into that 30-month reservation time, right? So I'll still wind up with the same December 1st, 2023 deadline to file all the various countries I want. But I've delayed a little bit filing that PCT application because it's not my first filing. Now, of course, can I file later than June 1st, 2022 without a priority claim, meaning I don't get the benefit of today's filing date? Sure. Absolutely, I can do that. I take the risk that there's nobody else who did something in the meantime. Absolutely, that's something that's possible. But you have to be careful because if I do that and my US patent application still publishes at 18 months, so say December 1st, 2022. This time it really is 2022. My own publication now will be prior art against anything that comes later, including my own later filed applications without that benefit claim.
Okay, so what countries should I file in if I'm looking to do a patent? Is there certain countries I should, or is it just up to the person?
Well, there are a lot of different ways of looking at it. So, the first question I always ask anybody is where are you selling? Where are you manufacturing? Where are you producing? Where are you using whatever it is that you've patented? Because that's always your first list of countries where it would be important to protect it, right? You want to protect whatever you're doing wherever you're doing it. So I'm going to look at all of those places. Okay, let's say I sell in the US and Germany, I manufacture in China, and I do some research in Japan. Well, I'm going to want to have protection in all those places to prevent competition for all of those activities. Then there's the other way of looking at it, which is forward looking, right? I'm not actually practicing the invention yet. And this is something that happens very commonly, for example, in the pharmaceutical world, where you get your protection early before you get your approval to actually market and sell your drug because of the rightfully so long regulatory process. So then you look, where do I expect these activities to be happening? Where do I expect to be my bulk of sales? Where do I expect to manufacture? And you pick select the countries you want to file in that way. Now, it's very common, especially again for pharmaceutical companies, to have what's called tier listings, right? So, tier one might be countries where you have expect to have the biggest sales: U.S., Europe, Japan, China, maybe Australia, maybe Mexico and Canada because of trade agreements, things like that. So you say, look, this is anything where we expect to have something commercial or we're not sure, we want to file in at least tier one to make sure we're protected should it turn into anything. Then you get down to your tier two, your nice to have countries, right? Where you might have some real sales and there might be markets to protect, places like Brazil, Korea, Israel, more of Europe, South Africa, a number of other places. And that would be if by the time you need to make a decision, you're seeing something that has real interest. You have great results. You have a feeling it's either going to really result in a product or really draw attention from others who might want to license or buy from you. So you would expand your offerings there. And then maybe you have tier three, which would be countries very specific to whatever it is you're doing, right? So if I'm working on a malaria vaccine, I'm going to want to protect that probably throughout Africa, where I would not want to for, say, something else like an allergy medicine. Because malaria, let's face it, Africa is one of the biggest markets for that specific kind of treatment.
Okay, so how expensive can it be filing internationally?
Well, that's the thing. It can be really expensive. So the way I look at it is you have a lot of different costs. So each country that you file in, you're going to have a cost for the local attorney you're working with. Because me, for example, as a US attorney, I'm only authorized to work in the US. If I have a client that wants to file something in Japan, I need to find Japanese counsel to work with because they're licensed in their home country. No different for any other country around the world. So you're going to have their costs involved with filing the application. You're going to, of course, have government fees, which are going to change from country to country. And then you're going to possibly have translation costs. If you file your first application in English and then you go into a jurisdiction where they accept English as a language, then you don't have translation costs. But if you are interested in some of those countries like Japan, you're going to have to translate everything, and that's going to increase the cost dramatically. I say a good rule of thumb is to budget $10,000 to $20,000 for every country that you want to file in. Not just for filing, but that's for filing, some prosecution activities, and then for an official grant fee. So maybe budget $10,000 for the filing event, and then $20,000 total for each application.
Okay. So, how do I know where I have obtained patents?
Well, that's an interesting question. And, I've worked with a variety of different companies. Some of them have kept great records the whole time, and every time they get a patent, they have their internal systems marked and updated. And it could just be as simple as pushing a button and downloading those records from your internal systems. Or if you're working with an attorney, their external systems. But that's not true for every client. So, I might have mentioned this story before, but I used to have a client where their international division was run by one brother who died, and his brother who ran the US division had absolutely no clue what international patents the company owned because the brother who ran that division did not keep good record keeping practices. So we were hired to come in and find out what patents they had and where they had them. And we started out, as always, by doing a search. And not just the company name, but all variations of the company name. So the company was Stiefel Laboratories. But they also had different divisions such as Stiefel Research Pty or Stiefel Ireland or other things like that. So we looked not just for the very specific name with all the words together, but each different name that we were aware they were using and the general name of Stiefel. So we looked in certain online databases on that basis, came up with a list of patents that we saw the company owned, and then we started reaching out to attorneys in certain jurisdictions that were of the most interest. I know we went through UK, Germany, Japan, China, Australia, Brazil, Argentina, a few others, to write to local counsel and say, look, we've been hired by this company to see what patent rights they own. They did not have the best record keeping. So this is what we found so far. Are you able to tell us of anything else that you can find through your local resources? And I would say that 9 times out of 10, we had actually found everything ourselves. But there was that 10th country where the local people were able to find something that we were not. So that's why it's important to work with locals in a situation like this.
Yeah, I'm sure that was hard. So, are the patent laws the same throughout the world, or do they change region by region?
Sure. So, in general, I'd say patent laws are more or less equivalent, right? Everybody will follow the same general requirements to get a patent. It has to be new, useful, and not obvious or have an inventive step, right? So if you look at the very high level, yes, that's pretty similar. But as you get down and down into the weeds, it's going to change a lot and vary a lot by country. So, one example is if I want to amend my claims here in the US, I can take bits and pieces from throughout my disclosure and kind of piece them together. Well, the words were all there, the concepts were all there. I can combine them in any way to my claims when I make an amendment. In Europe, for example, if you're at the European Patent Office, they're not going to let you do that. Whatever you want to say in your claims has to be very clearly, explicitly said in your specification if you want to make an amendment like that. You can't piece together piece here, piece there, piece there, piece there. They just don't allow it. Then you get into some of the Asian countries, like, say, Japan or China, where they're going to be very limiting on what you can patent based on what examples you have disclosed. This was very surprising to me once I first started working on patent applications drafted in Japan that were sent to my firm to practice and prosecute in the US. everything looked very large disclosures, very many examples, very narrow claims or scope of protection, and I couldn't figure out why until I learned more about Japanese practice. And I realized, oh, they're really going to be limited based on their examples. They're not going to be able to get broader claims if they don't show various aspects as exemplified as we've actually made these compounds. Totally different than the case here in the US. Um, there are a lot of other differences around the world because if you think about it, each country has its own national laws, and we can try to harmonize them to a certain extent. And I actually do a lot of that type of work as a member of AIPPI, an organization that's all about harmonizing international patent laws. We have study questions every year that we go through. This is what we think countries around the world should be doing to make their laws closer to one another. But at the end of the day, it's just guidance that we're giving. And a lot of countries do pay attention to our guidance. They try to work it in, but whatever happens to the patent laws are subject to the normal give and take of how do you pass something in each respective country. So even if there could be something and there's a proposal to amend the law in, say, South Korea to conform with what AIPPI proposed on, say, something new, novel, to bring it to the more worldwide standards. If there's a process to pass those laws, it goes through that normal process. And as we all know, once you get through that process, these laws or proposed laws can change, right? So every country has its own unique take, little spin, little slant on patent laws. Um, Even fees, right? It might cost me more money to file a patent application in the EPO, European Patent Office, than here in the US. And I might get fewer bites at the apple, where here in the US, for part of my filing fee, I'm entitled to 20 claims. In the
Okay.
European Patent Office, I'm entitled to 15 claims. And then for each claim after that, I have to pay more. Same in the US, that's after 20, I have to pay more. And those fees for how much more are different. That's why it's really, really important, not just um, for registration purposes or people who are registered in the separate bars around the world to work with people who are local, but also, quite honestly, you want to work with people who know what they're doing in their country. I have a good working knowledge of all the international systems because I've been doing it for 24 years. There are still a lot of things that I see that I've never seen before. And I always ask for help. I might preface it by saying, here's what I think, but can you confirm? Or here's the issue I see. How do we resolve it in your country? You always, always, always want to have that specific assistance.
Okay. Well, is there anything you want to add before we move on to the key takeaways for today?
Um, well, I think it's just very important to be strategic when you're building an international portfolio, that you really think in the beginning, where do I want to go? When do I want to do it? How do I want to do it? And budget for it, right? It's one thing if you're a US only company, all your sales are in the US, everything you do is here in the US, you have no capacity to go outside around the world. Great, that's really easy. Absolutely, I would just say file in the US only and be done with it. But for anybody else who maybe is dreaming of investment, who wants to get the highest price they can for their assets, who knows that this is a product that can be marketed around the world, you really have to think about where am I going to file. You know, when I said 10 to 20,000 per country, I mean 10 to 20,000 per country. So if now I'm filing my patent application in 5 different places, I have to budget 50,000, 100,000 for that patent application. And if I have, say, 4 or 5 different inventions, now if I want to internationally file all of it, I'm suddenly looking at 250,000 to like $1 million. It adds up very, very quickly. That's why being strategic is so important.
I can imagine. So, what would you say would be the key takeaways from today's?
The key takeaways is, as often I say, know where you're going, because if you don't know where you're going, wherever you wind up is going to be fine, right? I have no destination in mind, so here I am. No, that goes into my strategic point. You want to know what you're trying to do and how you're trying to get there. Number two, either have relationships with people in various countries of interest or work with a patent attorney like myself who has those relationships. I mentioned that I do a lot of international work and have for a long time. I personally know people in basically every country I file in at this point, and I file in dozens and dozens of countries around the world. So I know that if I have an issue in, say, Uzbekistan, and I'm just picking a place that's a less traditional market, I have someone that I can reach out to and email them or call them and say, hey, I have a problem here that's filing in Uzbekistan. Can you take care of it? And I know if there's any way that it'll be taken care of, they'll do it, right? Sometimes you're just out of luck, and that's understood. But I have those relationships with people. I know what their expertise is, not just in the patent laws, but technical also. For example, I don't want to send a case that's directed to a pharmaceutical to a law firm that works solely with mechanical or electrical inventions, right? And because I know everybody I work with, I don't do those things.
Awesome. Well, Joshua, thank you so much. I believe that's all the time we have for today. In the next episode, we will cover building IP portfolios to create company value. Joshua, thank you again, and I'll see you next episode.
Thank you very much, Martin. See you soon.
Bye bye.